The year was 1492, and the Atlantic was an ocean of shadows. Christopher Columbus stood at the helm of the Santa Maria, his face etched by salt and sun, but his thoughts darker than the water below. It had been over a month since they'd seen land, and even longer since the crew had tasted certainty. Behind him, 90 men sailed into the unknown, and each mile deepened their doubt. What began as whispered complaints had grown louder, festering in the bellies of the Pinta and the Nina. The men feared they'd been tricked, that this Italian madman, endorsed by Spanish crowns, had doomed them to a watery grave. They murmured by candlelight, sharing rumors like food. The stars looked different now. The wind sang in tongues. The seaweed floated wrong. The sun hung too long in the sky. And then came the compass. One sailor, a trusted helmsman, noticed something terrifying. The compass no longer pointed north. The needle drifted, like it had been cursed. Word spread faster than any wind. The earth itself seemed broken. But Columbus knew why. What they were witnessing was true magnetic variation, the natural discrepancy between magnetic north and true north. A phenomenon unknown at the time, but explaining it would only fan their fear. So instead, he lied. Each night, he altered the recorded distance they'd sailed, claiming they were closer to Spain than they truly were. Each morning, he smiled and swore they'd see land tomorrow. But trust was a tide, and his lies couldn't hold it back forever. One night, deep in September, he heard the sound that chilled his bones more than any storm. A door latch, a knife unsheathed, footsteps gathering in the lower deck. The men were organizing. Martin Alonso Pinzon, captain of the Pinta, had begun holding secret meetings. Some said he planned to seize the helm, turn back, and throw Columbus to the sea, claiming he died of illness or simply vanished in the night. By the 30th night, the crew was openly speaking of mutiny. Not in riddles, not in fear. And in the captain's quarters, Columbus sat awake, staring at a blank journal page, knowing that if he slept, he might not wake again. Yet in all this turmoil, he did not abandon the voyage. Not because of pride, because of a promise. He had told Queen Isabella that he would bring her another world. He had told his son he would make their name immortal. And he had told himself again and again that if he turned back now, history would forget he ever lived. So he planned, quietly, desperately, and 3 days later, he would stake everything on a lie, a compass, and a flock of birds. Columbus's logbooks were now half-truths stitched with fear. Each morning, he announced false distances to calm the crew, shaving off leagues, inventing tailwinds, pretending the sea was cooperating. But his compass continued its strange betrayal. The needle, once steady, shifted more each night, dancing unnaturally. The sailors took it as an omen. They whispered of falling off the edge of the earth, of sailing into the devil's mouth, of the ocean swallowing ships whole. On the 35th day, things cracked wide open. The crew of the Nina demanded a return. Weapons were drawn below deck, and one sailor, Miguel de Torres, threatened to put a dagger through Columbus's heart. He was only stopped by the sudden intervention of the Santa Maria's priest, who claimed mutiny would curse them all. But curses were already whispered. Some sailors said the stars were no longer familiar, that they had drifted into a realm outside God's creation. Others saw floating vegetation, green, thick, and strange, and cried that it came from a drowned world. The scariest part wasn't the sky or the sea. It was the silence. Columbus noticed that even Martin Pinzon, once defiant, now spent long hours staring into the water. The man no longer held secret meetings. He prayed aloud, begging to see land. That terrified the crew even more. If Pinzon, the bravest among them, was shaken, then surely all was lost. And then came the birds. In the golden light of a calm morning, with the wind soft and the ocean glassy, they appeared. Flocks of green and red birds, unknown to any man on board, flew low over the ship, heading west. Not migratory seabirds, not albatross, land birds. Columbus rose from his post and shouted, "Follow them! Follow the birds!" Even the most hardened sailor paused. For a moment, the fear broke. Even they could not deny what they had seen. Some claimed it was a miracle, others a trick. But Pinzon gave the order without waiting. They turned west again. Columbus had no idea if the birds meant anything. But it was enough. Enough to delay the mutiny. Enough to make them sail just a few more days. Enough to keep his throat from being slit in the night. The Santa Maria creaked forward into silence. 2 more days passed. Then 3. On the 9th of October, the crew demanded a final deadline. 3 days more or they'd turn back, with or without him. Columbus agreed. 3 days. If nothing appeared by then, the voyage would end in shame. He would never be remembered. No maps would bear his name. The future would forget he ever existed. He stood alone that night on the quarterdeck, staring into the ink-dark sea, whispering prayers he'd long since abandoned. Then, in the darkness, on the 92nd sunset since departure, came a glimmer, not in the sky, but in the water, a floating branch, with berries still green, and that was only the beginning. The branch was wet and fresh, as if it had just fallen from a tree. Columbus held it in his hands like a sacred relic. Around him, the sailors froze. The salty wind carried no scent of land, but the branch didn't lie. Berries still intact, leaves unspoiled. The ships pressed westward, the crew suspended between hope and madness. Then, at 2 a.m. on October 12, 1492, from the Pintus crow's nest, a shout pierced the night. Tierra! Tierra! Land! Land! The ships rang with chaos. Laughter, sobs, prayer. Men who had cursed Columbus now kissed their rosaries. Some fell to their knees weeping. Others simply stared into the blackness ahead, where a low shadow rose from the sea like a promise. At dawn, the sun revealed what none had truly believed they'd see. A green shore lined with palm trees, white sand glowing in the morning light. The air was warm, rich with scents no one could name. They had not fallen off the earth. They had not sailed to their deaths. They had found a new world. But the moment wasn't without bitterness. Martin Pinzon, who once threatened Columbus's authority, rushed to take credit, firing his cannons early, planting his own banner before Columbus could land. Tensions simmered. Resentments bloomed. Still, Columbus stepped onto the sand first. Kneeling, head bowed, pressing the Spanish flag into the earth of what is now believed to be San Salvador Island in the Bahamas. But the price of history was already written into the sea. Many of those sailors who tried to kill him, they would never return to Spain. Some died from disease, others from fights with indigenous peoples, and some simply vanished, lost to jungles, storms, or silence. Columbus returned to Europe a hero, yes, but the world he left behind was now on fire. His name would echo for centuries, but few knew how close he came to dying nameless, buried in the belly of the sea, betrayed by his own men before discovery was ever made. It wasn't just the new world he found. It was his own survival, balanced on lies, storms, and the fragile wing beats of a flock of birds.